Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy,
invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy,
building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 65. Hi everyone, welcome back to Mighty Married Moms. I'm Debbie Owen from You Can Raise Great Kids.
Linda Tighe from All Well Breaks Loose.
And Wendy Williams from connectagain.org.
We are really excited to be able to introduce you today to Dr. Laura Markham, who was trained as a clinical psychologist, earning her PhD from Columbia University. She's the mother of two children, now ages 19 and 23. I have kids around the same ages.
Yeah.
And Dr. Laura is the author of the book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, right here, How to Stop Yelling and Start Connecting, and also Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings, How to Stop the Fighting and Raise Friends for Life. You can find her online at ahaparenting.com, and I'll spell that for you. It's ahaparenting.com. Dr. Laura, we are thrilled to have you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. If you could just give us, just a minute or two about your background and how you got to doing what you're doing and what kind of led to having you do the services that you have today for families.
Okay. I already had my training as a clinical psychologist when my son was born. I was finishing up my training. And so I had read lots of research studies, and I knew the psychology of child development. And then my son was born, and I realized this is the hardest thing in the world. Yeah. And not only that, the people who wrote the studies, not to be gender biased, but were mostly guys who had not actually raised children themselves. Now, they often had great things to say about how the child was conceptualizing things in their what they thought, but they had never tried to get a child into the bathtub. And I realized, oh my goodness, parents really need help, hands-on practical help.
Right.
Take those ideas about how the brain develops and how, the conscience develops and how we want to do the right thing. How can we integrate all that with how to get the kid to stop hitting his brother and stop throwing his food and, get his shoes on to get out the door when we needed him to. So parents do the hardest job there is, and they don't get much support.
Yeah.
So that's why I do what I do. So I don't practice as a psychologist in the traditional sense as a therapist. Mm-hmm. All I do is work with parents.
That's great. So what do you call that role?
Well, you could call it a parenting coach,
right?
Because, sometimes we do talk about the parent's background because often our own issues from childhood get in our way as we parent. So I do function at times as a therapist. Yeah, who knew? Who knew, right? Remember those days when you thought you were so calm and together, and then you had kids and you realized, oh my goodness, this small person can send me right over the edge, right?
Yes. So. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I find that interesting what you said about the fact that interesting that our own parenting can get in the way. I mean, how we were parenting can get in the way. I think that's. I'm going to just say for me, it was 90% of every resistance or issue was that's not the way we did it at my house or whatever. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm a stepmom. So I'm dealing with the mother of my children. If you understand, right?
I do.
So I didn't have my own children. And so when these boys come to my house for the holidays, for Christmas, and they're expecting 975 gifts that all are very large. And in my family, I notice around my Christmas tree, all the presents are very compact and little, and a lot of them are homemade. And and it was such a culture clash, and I just felt like what they were getting was making them bad people. So I don't mean to derail us, but that whole concept of how we were raised and how we try to parent,
Yeah. Well, and it gets very complicated because you're not just talking about what people get used to. You're talking about how they feel loved. So your stepsons were feeling that love was wrapped up in how many presents and what size. And, I still remember when I was 12 and I got one bigger present, which was a purse, which I really wanted the purse. And there were 6 kids in our family, so we didn't have big, lots of things. But when we were little, we might get more little presents. And I still remember when I was 12 feeling like I only got one present. They loved the other kids more. And so, it's so complicated. So I'm with you about how to make the Christmas more meaningful with fewer things or fewer, it's more on the connection than the presents. But for your stepsons, it could easily be, well, I don't feel love now, right? It all gets so complicated.
Totally. Totally.
All relationships are complicated, and they're complicated by, as you said, the baggage that we bring from where we were brought up and what our parents did. And then, but when you have a family, especially if you still have two parents who are living together, then you've also got his way of doing things when he was growing up, and her way of doing, and you figure out how to make that become a new blend.
Yeah.
Well, I find that parents, most of us, think that there's a way to have a perfect relationship with another human being with no conflict. There's no such thing as no conflict.
No.
The nature of human relationships is that there are two people. So there's my view, my feelings, my needs, and yours. And they're going to do this sometimes. And so I think the most important thing we can teach our children and model for our children is how do you work out conflicts in a way that's respectful of the other person and still gets your own needs met, right?
Exactly.
We're not mostly taught this. Most of us are not taught this in childhood. So it becomes very hard for us to teach it. And also with our partners, we're often not modeling very good conflict resolution, right?
Exactly.
True.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to just switch tack a little bit here because I know you do have this very new book about siblings, and that is such a huge headache for so many families.
Yeah.
So if you could, particularly right now, we're recording this in summertime, and then it'll show up probably in about a month toward the end of summer, and kids are getting back and ready for school. And what are the most common reasons that siblings argue? Whether they're 5 years old or 15 years old, what are some of the most common reasons at core?
Yeah. Well, there's one really big reason, and that is that when we live with someone, we're always, it's like the gears shifting, and sometimes somebody is very compatible with us, and sometimes they just rub us the wrong way. And so certainly, as we just said, in all human relationships, there's conflict, and people don't know how to work that out. So we can actually this is a good thing to know, is that you actually can give your children skills to work through those things that arise in the course of daily life. So whether it's the 3-year-old fighting with its sibling about a toy, which is a lot of what they fight about is toys at that age, right? Yeah. Or, the 11-year-old fighting about whose turn it is to use a game or to get into the bathroom or whatever, there's or to set the table. There's always conflicts in daily life, and so that's one thing people fight about, children, siblings. But another thing that happens that we don't always see is again the under the surface part of am I loved? Am I loved? Because when you think about it, all humans are programmed biologically to survive, right? Which means we need to find the resources we need to thrive, and we need to protect those resources. So when we're very little, one very important resource is our parents' attention and time and love, because frankly, a 3-year-old isn't going to survive out in the wilds without a parent there to protect and nurture them, right? And feed them. So 3-year-olds don't live in the wilds anymore in our culture, but they don't know it. Their genetics are still from basically the Stone Age because we evolved very slowly. So when the new baby is born, the 3-year-old looks at the new baby and says, that's a competitor.
Right. Yeah.
There's resources. And you have enough love to go around, but you only have 2 hands. And the truth is, you are a little overwhelmed with that new baby. And it does make sense that your 3-year-old feels threatened. So when the relationship starts off that way, we can do a lot at that point to help the 3-year-old still feel like we adore them. We could never love anyone more. And that's the message we need to give each child is, I could never love anyone more than I love you. But most of us we don't really know how to do that. So the whole last third of my new book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings, is about how to welcome the new baby and help your older child or children still feel like they don't have anything to be threatened about. Right. And they can have a great relationship with the sibling. It will just enrich their life. So, but we're mostly not taught that. So what mostly happens is they get older. The 3-year-old picks on the little one, there's bickering back and forth. And as the little one gets older, they fight back. And then there's this sort of standard bickering that goes on. Yeah. And we don't know how to intervene in that once it's gotten out of hand, but they have a little chip on their shoulder. So it's possible to fix that. And that's what the whole middle of my book is about for families with children who have gotten a little older. How do you teach them those skills? How do you stop the competition and the sort of constant rivalry that goes on?
Right. So one of the things that we like to do for our listeners and viewers is, give them just a couple of real action tips. Mm-hmm. Can you share one solid action tip that a parent could take in order to ease the conflict and help with resolving problems between siblings?
Right. I would say one very important tip is to intervene rather than letting kids work things out themselves when they're little until they know the skills. We're often told by experts, don't get involved. When you get involved, you make things worse. And you know what? Those experts are right. That's what every study showed. But then we looked more closely at the studies and we realized that the way the parents were intervening is the parents were saying, you're right, you're wrong. Give that back to her. How can you treat your sister that way?
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
And so when parents come in as the heavy and they're the judge and the jury, yes, so if you just ignore fighting, it will maybe be a little less. If you come in and intervene the way that I just described, you're heightening all the bad feelings. Right. And so at that point, your kids may acquiesce for that moment, but they're really mad at each other, and later in the day it will come out, and you're setting up a cycle of fighting, right? Right. Yeah. But then we went back. So we said, okay, so don't intervene. But then we went back and looked what happened when we don't intervene. We're creating bullies because it's force makes right? The person who has the most power, usually the oldest child, wins. Bigger. They don't get physical. They just threaten. And sometimes it's just as simple as saying, I'm not going to play with you. But a lot of times it's much more serious threat, exactly. Right. And so if we don't intervene and we don't give them the skills to work it out, we're in a way allowing bullying to be perpetuated. So instead, there's another way to intervene, which research has shown stops the fighting, or at least makes the fighting more constructive. So there's less power play and more negotiation. So, because there will always be conflict, but they learn how to do the conflict better. And that way to intervene is not to take sides. So you move into the situation and you say, wow, you guys seem to be having a hard time. I hear loud voices. What's going on? Now, they both want to tell you their side of the story. And most parents think, okay, who's right, who's wrong? No, you're not listening to figure out who's right and who's wrong. You're listening so they each can tell their side of the story, and they can each feel heard and unload and also listen to each other. Right. So after they've each told their side of the story, then you say, oh, I hear you. So Teresa really wanted to, to play the game this way. And Michael really wanted to play the game that way. Oh, that's a tough problem. So then you don't just say, here's the solution. You say, that's a tough problem. So you dignify it. Yeah, you're right. That is a tough problem for little kids. I wonder how you'll work this out. What could you do, right? And then they look at you blankly the first time you do this. But over time, they start to learn how to come up with ideas. So in the beginning, Teresa says, well, we play it my way. And Michael says, we play it my way. Right. So you think the solution would be to do that, to play it your way. And you think your sister should just do what you want. And you think your brother should just do what you want. Right. Is that going to work for you? Is that going to work? No. So what could we do? How could you both get what you need? And this feels like to parents when they first hear this, oh my goodness, that's too much work for me. I have to get dinner on the table, right?
But it's so much easier in the long run.
Yes, because they learn how to do it. And what you hear after you do this for a few months, you hear your children as you're making dinner in the background saying, but Michael, I want to do it this way and you want to do it that way. What can we do that we're both happy?
Yeah. And then you're like doing the little happy dance.
Exactly. Yeah. My son used to say, Mommy, we're all happy now.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah.
That's awesome. One thing that struck me is you may have this in your book. I don't know. It seems like it's an old chestnut that we actually ask a lot of children when they have siblings come into the house we ask a lot of them emotionally. And the way that this was posed to me, it's like when you introduce the older older child to the new baby, it's like saying to your husband, honey, I want you to meet Joey. Joey's going to live with us. And he's younger and more handsome than you, and your old clothes are going to fit him, and we're going to love Joey just as much. My love for you as my husband is not diluted. I just love Joey too, and he's going to live with us. And can you imagine my husband going, sure. But that's what we're asking our children to do, is to expand and trust that we still think that they're very important and critically important to our lives, and we would die to protect them. But they're going, you love this other one too? Yeah. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. And parents, when they have a new baby, often there's a trouble spot that they hit many times a day, which is when they go to feed the baby. They sit down with the baby is getting their full attention, they're sort of immobilized, so they can't help the older kid with his train track, right? And meanwhile, the older kid is like, over and over through the day, there are these incidents where you can't respond to them, and you're cooing over the baby, right? And then the child starts to act out. They look right at you and they dump their juice on the floor, or they throw their train, or they come and they climb on the baby, right, while you're trying to feed the baby.
Yep.
So a lot of times parents will say, there's nothing I can do. I just put him in front of the TV and I go into the baby's room and I shut the door. And I say, well, that sounds like it makes perfect sense, but imagine if you took Joey into the bedroom while your husband was watching and said, see you later, honey, watch TV. Right. What's he going to do while you're, and then they're surprised that while the kid's supposed to be watching TV, he's having a total tantrum or he's tearing the house apart.
Tearing the house apart.
Guess what? You're in the bedroom with Joey.
Yeah, that's right. Just like my husband would be tearing the house apart if I was in the bedroom with Joey. Totally.
Doesn't work.
But it's interesting that we ask very young people to try to adjust.
Yeah.
So I just have a whole respect for that request of siblings to try to do this when they're not as emotionally prepared as my husband and Joey.
I want to encourage parents that there are ways to make this better for the younger child. And so this is a second thing, you said, what are the most important things for people to know? I think this is true for all parents, not just parents of siblings, but it's critical with siblings. And that is that emotion is not dangerous. Emotions do drive behavior, and behavior can be dangerous. If he's throwing the train at the baby's head, that's dangerous. But his emotion of being jealous of the baby is not dangerous. And what's more, as we acknowledge emotion begins to fade away. Emotion is a message. Emotion is just a message from our body that there's something wrong. We're afraid we need to run from the tiger or the burglar, if there's an emotion in our body, it's telling us something. Now, sometimes it tells us the wrong thing, like that the baby's actually dangerous, but the kid has a good reason for feeling the emotion, right? So with my son, when my daughter was born, he would come to me and he would say, can we send her back now? and I don't know why I hate her. I just do.
I just,
and he would be so sort of tense and I would just take him in my arms. And, I understand parents who say, I just want to say to him, how could you be so mean to a little baby? But that's how he feels. And so I would take him in my arms and I would say, oh, Eli, you know what? It must be so hard for you to always have to share me with her, and that she's always there now, and that when you need my help with your train track, I can't come help you right away. It must be really hard. But you know what? You can always come and tell me when you feel like this. I always want to know, and I'll always try to make things better with you. Yeah. And so he would just sort of melt in my arms. And then he would give me a big hug, and then he would go off and play with his train track. And then about 20 minutes later, I would see him go to the baby, and he would stroke her gently. And, it's just, we open up the space for those good feelings once we acknowledge the bad feelings, right? And because then the bad feelings, he doesn't feel so alone. He doesn't feel like a bad person.
Right.
Like, okay, well, mom understands, and I got that off my chest, and actually life isn't so terrible.
It's not so bad.
Right.
It passes. Yeah, you're right.
Laura, let's jump ahead a few years. Let's say, because, we're all of a certain age, and you are with us too, because as I said, I have 3 children right around the same ages as yours. And let's talk about teenagers who are like this, and maybe the parents have not been able to do this as a preparation through time. And so now they're saying, okay, I have a problem in my house. What do I do with it?
Yes. So the first thing is to make sure that they're not participating in the problem. Often we unwittingly reinforce the problem by making one kid wrong. It's always your fault. You're always you don't say that to the kid, but you say things like, you know better than to pick on your sister like that. I've told you time and time again, right? So and yet you're not acknowledging his perspective, which is that his sister is, maybe she's different than he is. Maybe he's a little more quiet and bookish and she's the life of the party and he's always feeling second best, right? And so his only way to get back to her is to make these little nasty undermining digs at her or something, right? So whatever your situation is with your kids, realize that each child has a reason for acting as they are. And those emotions are what drives the behavior. So if you can help the kid with the emotions, you can change the behavior. So the first thing to do is to always connect with each child individually, right? And the second thing to do is, as I said, to look if you're contributing to the problem in any way and zip your lips and instead play a positive role. Listen, when he wants to complain about his sister, not in front of her, but privately, he's totally allowed to tell you. And you can say, boy, that must feel pretty bad when she does that. I hear you. It would be hard to feel that way. So you're not, even if you totally disagree, even if he says to you, she always gets her way, she always goes first, you always prefer her, whatever, and you think he's completely wrong that last night he went first, and you secretly actually give him his way because you're afraid he'll have an outburst, it doesn't matter. You acknowledge, so you feel like that. That must be hard to feel like that, right? All you're doing is empathizing with his experience. And so...
And that works in all relationships.
Every relationship, exactly right. And because he's now feeling understood, he has a lot less reason to act out against his sister. Those feelings are starting to have less hold on him. And you can also then, so that's the first and the second thing, connecting with him, making sure you're not contributing, but you're a positive force in it. And then the third thing is to find positive interactions. The research on this is that when we are in any relationship, we need 5 positive interactions for every negative one. Because then, if we don't have that, the negative ones loom large in our minds because our minds have a negativity bias. We're always biased. We're always guarding against, a negative thing might happen. I have to protect myself.
Right.
That's how the mind works. It's designed to work that way. So we need to make sure that we have the balance of the positive instead. And so you may wonder, well, if my kids are always fighting, how do I create a positive interaction? It can be a small one, but if you can get them laughing with each other, right, then that's a positive interaction. If there's anything they like to do together, if there's a certain TV show they like to watch together, it's just them bonding, let them watch it, bring them popcorn, encourage anything that is the thing they like to do together. If you have kids who are a little bit distant in age and therefore they don't tend to play together, which can happen, a 4-year gap is what I had, so that's a lot. You find things that they do like to do together. And you really try to make that happen and try to make something positive happen between them. Don't get hung up on the 5-to-1. Just make something happen as often as you can. And certainly every day you want something positive to go on between them. And you can even create little rituals in your life so you don't have to fight with them to do it. So a ritual might be that every morning before everybody leaves the house, you have a group hug. Or if that's too chaotic a time, maybe you do it at bedtime, or maybe when you go in to hug your daughter goodnight, you say, did you hug your sister goodnight? And she might look at you like, no, I'm not going to either. And you can say, I think it would mean a lot to her. Yeah. And, you can start to get your kids to develop little rituals of their own to connect.
Yeah.
Does fist bump work between boys?
So the hugging is a little harder. The hugging is a little harder between boys, and boys are a little more competitive with each other. I mean, testosterone does work that way. The research shows they're more competitive. But on the other hand, they often bond through competition. So it depends on how they are together. If one of them is constantly putting the other down, like, I can make 5 baskets in a row and you can't, then you'll have to talk to him about it and say, hey, in our house, we try to be respectful to each other. That didn't sound respectful. How about a do-over? Sounds to me like you're pretty proud of it. You can say how proud you are that you can do this without referring to your brother, can't you? So you can coach them, and you can also coach the brother to say,
good job.
You can tell your brother you don't like that. You can tell your brother that you want him to speak to you respectfully. And it's really important that you're not, I said when they're little, you intervene. If they're teenagers and you've never intervened, you might still need to intervene, right? And one of the ways you intervene is you coach the underdog to stand up for herself. So So anyway, you asked about boys bonding. It doesn't have to be through competition. I'm just suggesting that that is a way that older boys bond, but you can find a way for it to be positive and you don't set up the competition. Let's all just enjoy playing basketball together. And then, in fact, if you play with them, I don't know about you three, but I am terrible at basketball. I happen to be short and have no physical skills. So it's great for me to play basketball with my kids because I will always be the one that they laugh at. Right. And that's great because it takes the focus off the sibling who's not as good. And so I'm laughing at myself. I'm self-deprecating so they can feel better about themselves and they can bond about how bad mom is. You know?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's
really.
great.
That's very adult of you.
Right. Well, I can't believe it, but our time is up. But
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. There's so many questions I still want to ask, but this was really terrific. And
we have about 20 here we want to ask.
Another time. I would love to talk with you again. It's very fun.
Excellent. Okay.
Good.
We'll definitely have you come back.
This has been amazing.
Hold you to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just there's so many things that families deal with, and whether it's your marriage relationship or if it's your health, what's going on with your kids is incredibly important. It affects everything else.
So stressful.
All three of these are really so important in terms of how you feel about yourself as an adult, and then how you feel about your relationships with your kids, with your spouse, or your parenting partner if you're not living together.
When I talk about Mighty Married Moms with people who aren't familiar with it, I say, none of us want to go to bed at night going, I can't believe that I'm failing at this, because we didn't walk down the aisle. We didn't have these children. We didn't envision a life where we felt defeated and not so good at it.
Right.
So this is what all we're about, is to try to say, it's in there. We're just trying to help you cultivate it and get there. And having people like you help us do that is just so key.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, Dr. Laura, are there any things that you want to share? To tell us about your website, any projects or
Next projects,
anything you've got coming up that you'd like people to know about?
Well, my website is like 1,000 pages. It's huge.
It's a treasure trove.
And it's for parents of all age kids from pregnancy right through the teen years. Yep. And it's called ahaparenting.com, AHA parenting.com. And it's just a free service. So it's there for anyone who wants it. Mm-hmm. And another thing that's available, again, as a free service is that I have a newsletter. And the newsletter, I know a lot of newsletters are just promotion and you don't want them in your inbox. What I hear about this newsletter is that it can change people's lives. I hear it's transformative and that it's just what you need showing up in your inbox. And it's really geared toward helping you regulate your own emotions. Mm-hmm. So once a week, it's a compilation of 4 articles, like the blog post of the week and a question from a parent, things like that. Mm-hmm. But the other 2, and you can sign up for just once a week. Mm-hmm. But the other 2 are really in-depth articles about how to regulate your own emotions, how to connect with your child, and how to help your child when they're having a hard time. So that's a free newsletter that's also available. You can sign up on any page at ahaparenting.com.
Oh, great.
And then both of my books go into more depth to help you stay on track as a parent. And as you mentioned, they're Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much. Everybody, we have been privileged to have Dr. Laura Markham with us today from ahaparenting.com. This is Mighty Married Moms, and we hope that you will please find us on iTunes and give us a rating and a review. That would help spread the message a lot. Please share this with all of your family and friends, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community,
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.